I'm Dr. Sue. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love being asked to be a part of this expo, and I hope as you're able to sit and listen to what I have to say, I hope that some of it may resonate with you as new parents or parents that have had children for many years. It really doesn't matter. I think reminding you of your intuitive capabilities is always going to be very important. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am a pediatrician in Lewiston. I do have a private practice called Purely Pediatrics, and I've been open for now about 4 years, working on the fifth year soon. But parenting has become quite a niche for me and my families. We talk about it a lot, and as we talk about it, I can feel families becoming happier, more peaceful, and getting their questions answered has made such a difference in their lives as well as my own. I do learn from every family and remember that we all have something to offer each other. That's why connecting with other families is really helpful as well. If there's other people that you feel close to that you want to ask questions with, remember your pediatrician and your pediatric group are always there for questions. After office hours, they're always on call as well. So make sure that if there's anything that you feel that you want to ask your pediatric group or family or friends, please make sure to do so. You're not in this alone. We are all in this together. And I want you to please remember that. I put together a few slides that I thought would be helpful as you go into this parenting journey. That I'd like to bring you back to your intuition and make you feel a little more peaceful about what you already know. There's so much that you do already know about your child that you're not even aware of. So what I'd like to do is try to make sure you are aware of the things that your heart is telling you about your little one. So the first slide is mentioning that your instincts are trustworthy. I always tell my families at Purely Pediatrics that I trust their instincts. Not that I'm saying that there's not a place for medical knowledge, a place for constructive discussion, but in terms of instincts, remember to take those seriously. If you feel that something is not right with your little one, or you feel that something that you're doing is not making you feel good about it, please revisit. Please make sure that you decide within yourself if this is working or not working. I use the term trial and error a lot, and I think it's so true when it comes to so much of what we do, not only just generally in life, but with parenting. A lot of it is trial and error. We're also very different, including our children. To respect the individuality of each one of us is important. And I think as parents, instincts are a blessing for us to understand what may be right for our children. So please try to tune into those, tune into how you feel when you're either following advice from others or you're doing something that you're not sure about and it may not feel right. If it doesn't, just revisit that for me. Remember, there's a lot of people that you're able to talk to about how things are going with you and your babies or your children, bigger children. I wanted to mention a few things I tell my families is that you cannot spoil an infant. You truly cannot. You hold that infant as often as you want to, as often as you feel the baby needs to. And a concept that I feel like we don't talk about a lot as pediatricians is that we become better at self soothing when we are soothed. The more that you soothe your infant and you are able to show them how to calm, give him the neural pathways, him or her, the neural pathways to understand what makes them feel better, that's when we actually become more independent as people, as individuals. So remember, although putting your baby down for naps, putting your baby down for tummy time and time on the floor is absolutely wonderful. Do not feel that you will ever spoil that baby of yours if you hold that baby too much. I want to reiterate that you cannot spoil an infant. I have a picture of some different ways to feed babies. Remember that there are different ways to feed babies. None of them are wrong ways. You either choose to breastfeed, you choose to bottle feed, or for certain circumstances, some little ones require G tube feeds. In terms of the breast or the bottle, remember that it's a very personal decision for you. Neither one of them are easy, to be very honest with you. Neither one of them always come intuitively. There are different tips and tricks that many different professionals, as well as different parents that have used these different sources of feeds, can offer. So make sure that you take away any guilt that you feel about your choice. As long as that baby is getting fed, that is what we want and care about the most. Whether you are actually doing a mix of them all, I mean, that is just perfectly fine. I have moms that have pumped and bottle fed every 3 hours. I am so amazed at that. I think that is a huge commitment. I have had moms that have breastfed and have been very challenged by breastfeeding for many different ways. And we've worked through them. And sometimes I have to remind families that I do not want them to live a life of stress based around the feeding up through from infancy to when the kiddos are older. Feeding is always a bit of a stress. So, talking about that, talking about how you feel, making a decision, and realizing that that decision may not be for you is okay. That it's okay. No matter how you feed your baby, it's absolutely okay. Your pediatrician is always there to talk to you about that as well. And that's what we do. We follow the weight, we follow the growth, the length, we follow the motor development, and through all those different ways, we help you understand what works best for you and your baby. For the postpartum reality, I mean, I think sometimes we come home with these babies and we think that it's just going to fall into place. Well, the thing is, it really doesn't always fall into place. And not to say that it can't, but 9 times out of 10, we have to be reminded that it can take, babies are up. Babies are not meant to sleep very much. Even throughout the first year, you will find that there may be where your baby wakes up multiple times through the night and it needs feeds, or there might be something else going on with teething, growth spurts, things like that. But when you return home with your baby, remember that generally a baby will sleep 1 to 3 hours and require feedings every 2 to 3 hours, particularly initially on. Breastfed babies will require possibly more feeds, so remember that. The routine you will become familiar with once you and your baby spend more time together. It can take months for you to feel better, to feel like yourself after delivery. I do want you to remember that you are not expected to be performing as you were prior to pregnancy or prior to delivering the baby, and that it is important for you to understand that and ask for help when you need that. It can take 6 to 8 weeks to regulate your milk supply, whether you're pumping and bottling or breastfeeding. It can take time to regulate. And just keep in mind, the more that you put the baby to your breast or you pump, the more milk you will make. Your pediatrician can help to connect you with any lactation counselors or consultants as needed. Pediatricians can sometimes be trained also in lactation or have a lactation counselor or consultant as part of their practice. So remember, if there's issues with that, take a look. Take a look at what's available in your doctor's office and ask the doctor about different resources that may be most helpful for you. There are a few different lactation consultants that are absolutely in our area and absolutely wonderful. So please remember to ask your pediatric group for resources if you feel like they could be helpful. One thing to keep in mind is lactation counselors and consultants are not just for breastfeeding babies, they're also for bottle feeding. And remember, bottle feeding can be challenging as well. So do not be afraid to reach out if there's issues or concerns that you have with either one. Sometimes I feel like the hardest thing is, as parents, we are not sure when our baby is getting enough breast milk. And sometimes it's even when they're getting enough bottled milk because we're not always sure how much to start with them. So if you are putting your baby to the breast, what I want you to do is a few for your few different tips is listen for swallowing. And swallowing will sound like this, almost like you're just closing your throat a bit. And that is a swallow. And that should happen frequently during the times that your baby feeds. Remember that they'll swallow, 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 and then they'll take a rest. They'll swallow, 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 and then take a rest. and that's very normal. A baby can feed up to 10 to 15 minutes on one side, but listening to those swallows helps you really know if they're truly getting milk from that breast. Feel for softening of your breasts. If you feel that you are engorged and after you put the baby to your breast for a few minutes, you're not feeling any softening, that's something that I want you to remember to talk to your pediatrician about. See if that's a possibility that there's an issue with feeding. You can always try to pump to see if there's some milk that can come out of that breast as well. But oftentimes you won't need to pump initially on unless it's something you decide to do. So really look at yourself also to see how you feel after you do breastfeed the baby. A baby that is milk drunk will oftentimes be sleeping, soundly sleeping. You'll see the hands will be wide open. They'll be hard to kind of arouse because they're they worked so hard to feed and they're truly exhausted. Feeding is exhausting for these little ones. So babies initially are very, very tired. It's very normal for that to be. There will be possibly some babies that you need to wake up every 2 to 3 hours to feed them and just do your best. Your doctor will help to look at the weight gain, and you'll also be able to know if your baby's getting heavier, if you feel like your breasts are softening. I think those are all kind of things that we can look at to see how our baby's doing with their breast milk. The other, one of the things I really, really like to ask families about too are the stools for the baby. It's not urine that we look at for the baby so much as stools to know that they're feeding. So by day 5, you will likely notice yellow seedy stools. You'll notice initially they'll turn the black meconium, and then you'll get into seeing more of a greenish color. And then usually day 4 or 5, we start to see some of the yellow seedy. Formula fed babies may not have quite as many yellow seedy stools, but their stools will also change. They will go from that black stools to a greenish yellow stool as well. So the number of stools for a baby that's young, 1 to 2 months of age, is generally 4 to 6 stools a day. Remember, there's always a range, so do not get caught up too much on the numbers. Just remember that if your pediatrician asks you how many times you're stooling, you'll just kind of go back in your mind and think about all the diapers that you've been changing, and it's going to feel like a lot. And if it feels like it's a lot, you can say that too. Um, I think that's really just some tips and tricks. Remember, always ask questions from your professionals that you're working with. I wanted to also mention this because oftentimes we use social media, in our if you're even holding the baby, I'll see moms and dads that have their phones. They're trying to connect, and we're all needing connection, and that's really the crux of social media. So it's not really always something to think of negatively because we all thrive on connection. But what can happen is that you can compare yourself and your baby to what other babies and parents are doing. That is one thing I really want to discourage you from doing. It's just fine to look at other babies' pictures, other families, but remember that comparing anything that you do, particularly with breastfeeding, but really generally anything, a comparison is really a joy stealer from parents. Remember, your baby is individual just as you are. Nobody will ever parent exactly the same way. So please do be careful of that when you're talking to other families or looking on social media. Remember that your journey is your journey, and it's important for you to remember that. I would love to remind you of that every week if I could, but please, please just remember that your journey is your journey. I wanted to talk a little bit about sleep too, because that is a very, very hard concept. I can't tell you how many times I hear from parents. They think that something's wrong, that their baby's not going to get enough sleep, that they're not getting enough sleep, and that they feel that something is wrong. So, sometimes we'll talk about sleep training. I have to tell you this: a baby is not meant to sleep. And I know I mentioned that a little bit earlier in this. A baby is not meant to sleep through the night. And when they do sleep through the night, generally 6 hours is considered a nighttime for an infant. And I'm not even talking about a younger infant, I'm talking about an older infant, over 6 months when you've already started solids. Babies, especially initially, are up a lot. And every time that baby awakens, it is just fine to feed that baby. Whether it's breastfeed or bottle feed, initially they'll only take 1 or 2 ounces. You'll use their spit up as a way to tell you if they've had too much as well, and you'll use their disposition, whether they've been happy or peaceful after a feed, to let you know how much they've gotten as well. But sleep training is something that I never condone. You will never hear me say sleep training. What I do say is baby led sleep, and that supporting the baby, going into the baby when they need support, whether it's feeding initially, whether it's because they're teething, or it's because they just need some bonding time. We will always, always help with understanding how naps may be affecting sleep. As the babies get older, we'll talk about feeding affecting sleep, and some babies are up because they're hungry. But initially on, remember, these babies are really, really needing to feed frequently. So initially, just know that a baby that's up every 2 to 3 hours is very normal, and this will not be forever. This will not be forever. It is a season, but it is something that the more that you're ready for and the more that you understand that sleep will come eventually. But right now, trying to use those moments of bonding, those moments of allowing that baby to sleep, to bottle feed or breastfeed with you, those are times that I want you to use a mindset of knowing that someday this baby won't be doing this anymore, and that they'll be so big and busy you will not even get a chance to take them and hug them. Right now, my boys are 11 and 12, 13 rather, and they hardly even want to sit by me anymore. So, to believe it or not, I remember those night times with them. Um, Being tired is not easy, and make sure that you do ask for help when you need it, whether it's from family members, whether it's from um, your partner, grandparents. Make sure that you get what you need to. It is exhausting, but it's only for a season. Please do remember that. So, generally, giving birth to a little one changes your entire view of the world. And I'm constantly telling other people, not just families, but within myself, how much I have changed because of my sons, and how much your children reflect back on you. And things that you didn't may not have known about yourself are things that you will learn with this child or children that you may have already or that you may have just had. Your world is so different, and it's in a very beautiful way, a very challenging way as a parent. And remember, it's going to be your journey and their journey with your little ones. It is an amazing change. It can be very intimidating, and I just want you to know that you are going to do a fantastic job with these little ones, particularly because you are even part of this exposition, the Savvy Parenthood. You are already interested in learning how to be your best, and doing your best is all that your little ones will ever expect from you. So, one thing about, I kind of already reiterated this, is that being a mother or a father isn't about having all the answers. It's not about, parenthood is not about perfection. And when we do make mistakes, that's when our children can learn from us as well. Making sure that we're forgiving ourselves and finding peace in the fact that we are not perfect, that we will never be, and we should never be expected to be. It's trial and error. It's making changes as you need it. You may find, just an example, I found that my son, my second son, was constantly crying when I was trying to bathe my first son when they were babies. And I would have my second son in his little bouncer seat when I was in the bathroom with my other son in the bathtub. And my second son was crying, crying, crying. I knew I had to bathe him, my first son, but I just couldn't understand why my second son was crying so hard. And I realized that it was because he was tired. It was time for him to go to bed. So, and I actually had to read that in a book, you guys. It's not something that just came to me. I was desperate to try to understand sleep and understand infant behavior. I was truly reading everything I could. I tried so hard to understand, and then when I realized that he was giving me all the cues of being tired, I put him to bed before I bathed my first son the next night. and he slept while I was bathing my first son. So not only was he happier, but I was able to spend some bonding time with my first son as well. So, he was telling me what I needed to know. I just wasn't sure what it was. Remember that your little ones can be tired, and putting them to sleep when you do feel that it's a tired time for them is always something good to try. He was up initially every 3 hours, which I expected because I know that's what they do. But what that allowed me to do is spend time with my first son, knowing that my second son was getting what he needed to. So as I start to conclude this talk, I wanted to again mention that loving your child will always start with loving yourself. That is something that doesn't come natural for so many of us. And I work on this all the time. I'm always working on my relationship with my kids. I'm trying to work on myself to improve that relationship, trying to understand what my triggers are, understanding why there's times that I will get more upset than others. And oftentimes I find that my triggers are hit more so when I'm tired, when I'm hungry, when I'm stressed. A lot of the differences in my behavior with my kids is because there's things that I need as well. So making sure that you care about yourself, to think about what you need, to know that you are not expected to always respond with a loving, gentle manner when you need loving, gentle manners yourself. Knowing that there's going to be times that you're just going to be challenged, and expecting that, and trying to understand how you can make the next moment better for both you and your child by getting also what you need as well as what they need. So, in conclusion, I wanted to thank you again so much for being a part of this discussion with me. It was so fun to put this together. Um, I wish you a wonderful, amazing journey with your children or your child, knowing that it is going to be um, a time that you will always, always remember, knowing that you're going to learn so much about yourself through your kids, and watching them grow into their own individuals. There is nothing better than that. Remember to take care of you. Remember that your journey is your journey. And please reach out to other people, medical professionals, other families, um, anybody that you're close to. Remember to reach out, because nobody expects you to know all of this on your own. I am learning still as my kids are older. We are all learning. And if we take it from that perspective, I think it makes this journey so much more peaceful for us. So thank you so much. I wish you guys the very best. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.